Tonight on Currents News, millions of Americans are back on the job, a big jump in employment that's surprising the experts. Catholics and Evangelical Christians could be pulling back on their support for President Trump. There are new numbers on his approval. We begin introducing you to the special men who will soon be priests in the Diocese of Brooklyn.
Lifting spirits during this troubling time. I'm Emily Druby with the story of a Queens priest who's using his very special hidden talents.
And the doctor is in. With offices and workplaces reopening, what should people do to stay safe? The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. We begin with the news so many people have been waiting to hear. Millions of Americans are going back to work. The numbers are record-breaking, the biggest surge in employment since at least 1939, and that's being well received at the White House.
This is a very big day for our country.
President Donald Trump declaring victory at the White House Rose Garden after the release of the May jobs report. U.S. unemployment improved from 14.7% in April to 13.3% in May.
The numbers are great, and this leads us on to a long period of growth. We'll go back to having the greatest economy anywhere in the world, nothing close.
The numbers came as a surprise to economists, but because of the economy gradually reopening after the pandemic shut it down, more jobs were added rather than eliminated. 2.5 million jobs were gained in May. President Trump took credit for the numbers, calling the jobs report an affirmation of all the work we've been doing over the course of his administration.
We were very strong. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. We had the greatest economy in the history of the world. And that strength let us get through this horrible pandemic.
The good news comes after days of unrest across the country. The president addressed the protests over the death of George Floyd in police custody by saying the jobs report makes it a great day in terms of equality and a great day for George Floyd.
This is a great tribute. What we're announcing today is a tremendous tribute to equality. We're bringing our jobs back. You know, when we had our tremendous numbers and when we had, just prior to the China plague that floated in, we had numbers the best in history for African American, for Hispanic American, and for Asian American, and for everybody.
President Trump predicts next year will be one of the best years we've ever had economically, but he made it clear that would only happen if he stays in office. Wall Street loved the jobs news right from the start. The three major indexes soared higher and stayed there all day. By the closing bell, each had gained at least 2%. The Dow ended trading up more than 800 points to finish at 27,110. The Nasdaq gained almost 200 points, closing at 98.14, and the S&P 500 added more than 80 points and ended at 31.93. New York City is at a major turning point in the fight against the coronavirus. No new deaths from the disease were reported anywhere in the Big Apple on Wednesday. The city health department announced the breakthrough. It's the first time since March 11th that no New Yorker died from COVID-19. Statewide, the number of fatalities on Thursday was 42, the lowest since the outbreak started. Stay with us. Dr. Robert TIBALLI is here. Tonight he's talking about the large street protests and the possible spread of COVID-19 that's still ahead in this newscast. The demonstrations sparked by the killing of George Floyd show no signs of diminishing. Washington, D.C.'s mayor is predicting the largest protests yet this weekend. The outcry over Floyd's murder is also focusing a spotlight on cops and the use of force. Daryl Forges has the story from Minneapolis.
After global outrage over the death of George Floyd, the Minneapolis City Council vowing to change the police department. The City Council president tweeting, quote, "We are going to dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department and replace it with a transformative new model of public safety."
This is a moment in time where we can totally change the way our police department operates.
The move comes as the Minneapolis Police Department undergoes 3 separate investigations into Floyd's death, a state criminal case, a Minnesota Department of Human Rights investigation, and a civil rights investigation conducted by the FBI. The 4 now former police officers shown on camera during Floyd's arrest, all in custody, facing charges related to his death.
How? How does that happen in this world still?
Floyd's death and how police responded sparked nearly 2 weeks of massive protests around the world, and murals like this one near the White House have popped up across the country. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says next week the Congressional Black Caucus will introduce a new bill addressing police brutality. Still, demonstrators demand real change. This weekend, protesters plan to march in the streets as Floyd's family prepares to lay their loved one to rest.
Until the whole system is reformed, you're going to continue to see these mass protests. Folks are willing to tough it out for as long as it takes until justice is won.
Daryl Forges, Currents News.
The Liberal American Civil Liberties Union is suing over President Trump's visit to a historic D.C. church. Several protesters are joining the legal action, challenging the use of force to clear them from the streets ahead of the president's Monday trip to St. John's Episcopal Church. Canisters were shot into the crowd, and Attorney General William Barr said it was his decision to clear them from the area. Trump went to the house of worship after it was set on fire during the unrest in the nation's capital. When Trump held up a Bible outside St. John's, many of his religious defenders said they had no problem with what he did. Franklin Graham called it an important statement against looting and violence. But white Catholics and evangelical Christians could be pulling back on their support of the president. A new survey by the Public Religion Research Institute is showing a drop in support for the chief executive. His favorability among white Catholics is down 27 points since March. Backing from white evangelicals has fallen 15 points over the same period. Both groups voted in large majorities to elect the president in 2016. Despite pandemics and protests, vocations are still going strong in the Brooklyn Diocese. 4 brave men have heard God's call, and at the end of this month, they will join the ranks as new priests. Currents News' Jessica Easthope will be profiling all of them for you. She talks to one candidate in Astoria, Queens, who says service to the Lord runs in his family.
DRAGAN PUSIC'S has waited his entire life to get to this point. Later this month, he'll be ordained a priest.
It took me 42 years to recognize the call for the priesthood, because it's something that forms, slowly in some people.
Growing up in Croatia, a mostly Catholic country, Deacon DRAGAN doesn't know a life without the church. Commitment to God runs in his family.
There are several priests in my family. Also, there was a sister, religious, who served here at Manhattan for a lifelong.
But for most of DRAGAN's life, the priesthood never entered his mind. He imagined something much different.
I did not wish to be a priest. It was not my plan. I planned to marry, have a wife and a lot of children.
But God had another plan for DRAGAN. Looking back, he believes the seed was planted long before he even realized.
Missionary priest who was coming to our parish from Africa. So I was very much interested. I was begging my brother, come, let's go, take me to the talk. So I was somehow, from that early moment, was interested in those things. I did not know why.
Part of his early involvement in the church revolved around his first love, music.
When I was 16, I was in the church band, playing kind of. In that time, rock and roll was very popular in the church.
DRAGAN says church gave him an outlet to showcase his talents on the guitar, so he kept coming back.
Guitar, it was my love and a refuge in a moment of difficulties. So guitar was, I don't know, something, it's difficult to explain it, but when you touch the string, it's like kind of special feeling.
Decades after his old church band members went their separate ways, DRAGAN still plays. Now for the others serving with him at Most Precious Blood in Astoria. DRAGAN says as a priest, he's hoping to draw young people into the church by giving them a purpose, just like he had in his church band.
To stay in the church, you have to give them to work something, to feel useful. To feel that we need them,
As Deacon DRAGAN takes his final steps toward a religious life, is he excited? No.
It's not that I'm now, excited. I'm just in perfect peace with what I'm doing now.
Now God is the song in his heart. In Astoria, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
There's a lot more news headed your way. Protests before prayers. Why comments from Mayor de Blasio are being criticized by Catholics. Plus, a controversial statue which has stood for some 130 years is coming down. We'll tell you why. And turning ugliness into beauty. Artists transforming signs of destruction into messages of hope. Stay with us.
Now you can help us put your faith in the news. The next time you capture a newsworthy event, send us your pictures or video. It's easy. Go to netny.tv/send us, and you may see your submission on Currents News.
Outrage tonight among Catholic leaders over something Mayor Bill de Blasio said and didn't say. He seemed to call the ongoing protests over George Floyd's death essential and exempt from coronavirus regulations. But he didn't give the same clearance to religious services when questioned by reporters on Tuesday.
When you see a nation, an entire nation, simultaneously grappling with an extraordinary crisis seated in 400 years of American racism, I'm sorry, that is not the same question as the understandably aggrieved store owner or the devout religious person who wants to go back to services.
The New York Archdiocese's Director of Public Policy, Ed Meckman, criticized the mayor. It is clear that in the eyes of our government officials, the politically preferred viewpoint of anti-racism is favored and allowed, while the unpopular one of religious worship is belittled and denigrated. He further went on to say, we have once again been given proof that religious liberty is a second-class right. Bishop George Murray has passed away. The 71-year-old cleric died this morning at New York's Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital after a long battle with leukemia. Just days ago, he stepped down as Bishop of Youngstown, Ohio. The native of Camden, New Jersey, served as the first chairman of the U.S. Bishops' Ad Hoc Committee Against Racism. We will remember Bishop Murray in our prayers. As the nation confronts the evil of racism in the wake of George Floyd's death, the days are numbered for a controversial symbol of the Old South. A bronze statue of Robert E. Lee will soon be removed from Richmond. Virginia Governor Ralph Northam ordering the monument to the leader of the Confederate Army be taken down in response to the nationwide protests over racial justice. Some Virginians don't support the move, but the mayor of Richmond does.
It's time to heal, ladies and gentlemen. Richmond is no longer the capital of the Confederacy.
Go and tear down a piece of history just for other people's feelings. I mean, again, it's a sensitive subject. I wouldn't tear it down, though. Just do right by the people, do right by the state. Find a way to get this controlled in a way that's going to help everybody and not just the minority.
Governor is thinking that you remove the monuments on Monument Avenue and all of a sudden we're going to have racial harmony. That's a unicorn.
General Lee's descendant, the Reverend Robert W. Lee IV, is in favor of removing the statue. We've all seen them, the ugly wooden boards covering up storefronts from coast to coast, owners taking the step to keep their stores safe in these times of unrest. In Sacramento, artists are looking at the plywood as an opportunity. Olivia DeGennaro has the story.
Drive down almost any street in downtown Sacramento, and this is what you'll see. But over the past few days, these boarded up windows have become blank canvases.
Just not loving the way the wood looks up here by itself, so I want to make it look a little, send a message of hope.
The past few months have been a struggle for many small businesses, first forced to shut their doors due to the coronavirus and now having to board up their windows to prevent break-ins. But some, like AR Workshop in Midtown, are choosing to use this moment as an opportunity to show their support.
Especially on the tails of COVID and our shutdown for 2.5 months. You know, this of course is not easy, but it's the right thing to do, and we're in support of our community and doing what's right.
Other local businesses lending their plywood to black artists and people of color, like De Vere's Irish Pub, now covered in a collage of faces representing the social justice movement. And more murals are popping up by the minute. Several artists got permission from Rodney's Cigar and Liquor Store to turn their massive plywood wall along 10th Street into a commentary on what's happening around the country, using their creativity to turn the symbols of destruction and chaos into something beautiful and empowering.
I'm going to put a love, not hate here, and some other messages for justice and peace.
That was Olivia DeGennaro reporting. Many of those artists did not want to appear on camera. They wanted their work to speak for them. Still to come on Currents News, a concert to connect parishioners, how a pastor is using music to lift their spirits. Also ahead, are you ready to reopen? The doctor is in and he's talking about your safety as you head back to the office. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. Right now, with all the trouble swirling around us, a Queens priest is on a mission to lift spirits, and he's using some of the special talents God blessed him with. Currents News' Emily Druby has the story from Bayside.
Parishioners of St. Robert Bellarmine in Bayside, Queens know Father PIL-KOO John Hung as their beloved parochial vicar. But now they'll know his hidden talent. So you have to break my heart. He's a composer and a singer.
I assume that most people don't know, so this is going to be the opportunity to let them know that your priest can do something.
And he certainly can. While sitting in his home studio, Father Hung told us he's composed almost 20 songs. It's always been a big part of his life. Before the seminary, he attended music school. Eventually, he taught himself the art of composition. Now he's using his talents to give back to his parishioners, throwing a solo concert that will stream on the church's Facebook page and on their YouTube page.
I've been composing music so I can share my reflections with those music that I wrote.
Throughout the pandemic, St. Robert Bellarmine has been doing their best to be there for their parishioners, live streaming Mass and other services. They've also taken to the streets, blessing upwards of 90 homes. This concert is another way to stay connected to their people.
So I just wanted to let them know that they're not alone. I'm here for them.
It will go live at 7:30 p.m. on Friday. He sent us this little sneak peek of what viewers can expect. Without your grace, without your Christ. In Bayside, Queens, Emily Druby, Currents News. As the economy begins to open and protests continue to rage across the country, there are concerns about the virus spreading. Here to answer your questions, as he is every Friday, is Dr. Robert TIBALLI, an infectious disease expert with the Catholic Medical Association. And Dr. TIBALLI, as you know, protests are continuing around the country. Our reporters have been on the ground with the protesters. They say there's no social distancing. Most aren't wearing masks. So should we be concerned about a surge in virus infections?
Well, of course we should be concerned. There's no telling how profound this mixing of people in such close quarters could impact on the rest of society. It's possible that a lot of these folks may have already had the coronavirus back in April or before and gotten over it, but we don't know what settings they're going to go back to when they finish their protests and who they could infect at their work site. We would expect that we would see an increase, an uptick in 2 to 4 weeks after these events have started.
Boy, and keeping with the protests, the CDC says chemicals used by police to control the crowds, like they've been using pepper spray, that they cause coughing, which could spread the virus. Your thoughts on that?
Well, any type of extreme, vocal type of exercise, either singing or coughing, certainly could spread the virus, but I don't think that spreading the virus is the first thing on the policemen's minds. It's really to kind of restore order and with good reason these days.
But even think about that. The singing and the chanting, all of that's going on. But here's another concern that many people have as the economy begins to reopen. Many will be going back to their offices, and even if they practice social distancing, can the virus spread through vents in office buildings?
Well, I don't want to disrupt you feeling good about things, but it probably can. In the building I'm in, which is 65,000 square feet and 14 different doctors' offices, we have a common duct air supply that recirculates air throughout the building. So technically, somebody could be coughing in my area and be exposed to those particulate matter in another area of the building through our vent. But if you have ultraviolet inside the vents, that should help inactivate the virus, but not a lot of buildings have that. But some buildings have HEPA filters on their supplier return, but many don't because the HEPA makes the fan so much more inefficient because of the high filtering capability. But your question, yes.
Wow.
You could get exposed throughout the building from common air.
All right, many will also be getting back on the subways. The MTA here in New York City has said it may be hard to social distance yourself from other commuters. So everyone's being asked to wear masks. Do you have any other advice for commuters?
You should wear gloves as well. They could be, some type of glove, either a workman's glove or a leather glove, but you don't want to have your hands in contact with surfaces, and keep the gloves away from your face. Don't do what I just did here. But it's thought that the subways were actually one of the major vectors of disease dissemination throughout New York City, and one of the reasons why so many people got sick in New York. And so I think a lot of people are going to stay away from the subways with good reason until it's really quite evident that the coronavirus has subsided substantially.
All right, Dr. Robert TIBALLI, thanks for joining us this week, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Remember, the doctor is in every Friday to tell you what you need to know about the latest medical developments involving the coronavirus and to answer your questions. So send them to askthedoctor@desalesmedia.org. Again, the email is askthedoctor@desalesmedia.org. And finally tonight, some medicine for your soul, a new Marian shrine that will take your breath away. This is the breathtaking view at Our Lady of the Rockies Church in Alberta, Canada. The $14.8 million church in the mountain community of Canmore will host pilgrimages, conferences, and other events when pandemic restrictions are eased. Church leaders say it's a place for you to come to the Rockies and see nature's cathedral. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News Special Edition, anchored by Michelle Powers, will air this weekend starting Saturday at 1:30 p.m. Several rebroadcasts will follow, including on Sunday. Go to netny.tv for the complete schedule. We leave you tonight with a special virtual pilgrimage of the magnificent treasures found inside the Vatican museums, which have opened their doors again. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.